All right, today we're going to factor trinomials. So remember we talked about factoring yesterday. That means we're going to rewrite something as multiplication or as a product. So let's take a look. So before we get into factoring, let's just remember how to multiply two terms like this. So we have 2x times x, which is 2x squared. Then I do 2x times negative 4, which is negative 8x. Okay. Then I do that, which is 1x. And then 1 times negative 4 is negative 4. So then once I do that, I'm going to combine my like terms. So I have 2x squared minus 7x minus 4. Okay, now let's go on to the next one. So x times x is x squared. X times negative 3, negative 3x. Negative 8x, and then negative 8 times negative 3 is positive 24. Combine our like terms, so we have x squared minus 11x plus 24. Now, when we just distribute, that's what we did way back in the day, a few years ago. But now we're actually going to work backwards. So we're going to start out as a trinomial, and we're going to rewrite it as two things being multiplied by each other. So that's what we're going to do today. So let's take a look. First, let's write down our definition. So a trinomial is an algebraic expression made up of three terms. So it looks something like this: ax squared plus bx plus c. When we factor, we want to make sure that we have it in terms with our x squared first, then an x, then a no x. All right, guys, here's the steps. This will be a nice thing to look back at. I'll reference it as I do some of the examples. But the one thing to think about is if there's a GCF, we have to factor that out first. Today's, we won't actually have any like that. But let's go ahead and look at some examples. All right, guys, so we're going to factor here. So first thing that I like to set myself up with is, remember, this is A, B, and C. That's going to kind of help us out when we do this problem. So first, let's make our parentheses. Okay, I need to make 2x squared. Well, the only way I can do that with multiplication is 2x times x. So once I set that up, kind of halfway there, now I'm going to multiply my A times my C. Okay, so A times C. So 2 times 3 is 6. And we want it to add to our b, which is 5. Okay, so what things multiply to 6? Okay, so multiply to 6. But adds to 5. So I have 1 and 6, 2 and 3. 1 and 6 is 7 if I add them together. 2 plus 3 is 5. So I added to 5, so I know that I'm going to use these two numbers. Okay, now when I use those factors, I'm going to have to make a 2 and a 3. So if I look at my A term, or this number right out front, it's a 2. So I have to use that number to make one of these numbers. So 2 goes into 2 or 3. Well, it goes into 2 one time. So I'm going to put my 2 there. But I'm going to have to actually put a 1 in that blank because I need to use this 2. So 2 times 1 gave me 2. Okay? So it was a positive 2, so I'm going to put a plus there. Okay? And then my other number is going to go into the other spot. All right? So then my answer is going to be 2x plus 3, and then x plus 1. Okay? I know that that's my correct answer, because if I actually distributed this out, 2x times x is 2x squared plus 2x plus 3x plus 3. And I combine my like terms, this would be 2x squared plus 5x plus 3. So I know I did the right answer, or got the right answer, because it matches my problem that I started with. So you can always go back and check your answer, but this is my answer right there. Okay, let's take a look at this one. All right, so let's go ahead and set up our parentheses. Okay, so we have x squared, so the only way to get x squared is x times x. Okay, so give an x into both of those. Now remember, we're going to do a, which is 1, times negative 21. So a times c gives us negative 21. And we need to add up to 4. Okay? So now when I figured out what multiplies to a times c, it's a negative 21. So I didn't know that one's going to be positive and one's going to be negative. Okay? But we want to add it to a positive 4, so that means that our big number has to be positive. So I'm going to have a negative 1 and a positive 21. I'm going to go ahead and do 3 and 7. Okay? Negative 3 and 7. Now if I add these together, negative 1 times 21 is 20. That doesn't work. Negative 3 plus 7 is positive 4. So that's what I was looking for. So we're going to use negative 3 and 7. Now, same thing we're going to use that we did in the last problem, but if you notice, this is just a 1x and a 1x. So since they're the same number, 1 goes into both 3 and 7, so I don't actually have to worry about where my numbers go when my a value is 1. So I'm just going to go ahead and put negative 3 and a positive 7. So our answer is just x minus 3, x plus 7. Okay, let's set this one up. Okay. You have x and x, since that's x squared. Okay, so what multiplies to 16? Adds up to negative 10. Well, I have 1 and 16. Well, that gives me 17. We have 2 and 8. That gives me positive 10. So what's another way that I can multiply 2 and 8 to give me a positive 16? Well, I can make both of these negative. Okay, and then when I add those together, that's going to give me a negative 10, which is what we want. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in. Negative 2, negative 8, and there is my answer. All right, so now let's look at this one. We set up the same way that we did. We have x and x since we want it to be x squared. Okay. Now you got to be careful here. This is x squared. It doesn't have a b term, so technically that b term is just 0. So think, what things multiply to negative 16 but add up to 0? Well, I know 4 and negative 4 will multiply to 16, and they'll add up to 0. So there are going to be the two numbers that we'll use. So I'm just going to go ahead and put positive 4 and negative 4. It doesn't matter where we put these because both of these are 1x's. Okay? The only time you got to be careful of where your number goes is when these numbers are not 1. Okay guys, here's kind of a way to look at our trinomials and figuring out what signs are where. Sometimes you can just think about the numbers, but if not, this is kind of a little helpful thing. If c is positive, okay, we're going to have the same signs on our two factor pairs. Okay? If c is negative, we're going to have opposite signs. Okay, so once I figure out if it's going to be the same or opposite, then we're going to look at our b term. Okay, so if I look at the b term, if it's positive, they're both positive. Okay, if b is negative and the c is positive, okay, they're both going to be negative. Okay, now for the opposite sign ones, if b is positive, our bigger value or our larger number or our big factor, say big factor, is going to be positive. Okay, for this next one, if b is negative, then our big factor or our larger factor is going to be negative. Okay, that's kind of one way to think about it. This might help. If not, we can always just look at the signs and kind of think about number sense. So go ahead and jot this down. Alright guys, so when we do this exit ticket, I'm just going to kind of work through John. We're trying to find his mistake. So 3 times negative 10 is negative 30. So he did that part right. But the thing that I notice is that he has both of his numbers positive, which we wanted to multiply to a negative 30. So that means one of these numbers have to be negative. Well, it has to add up to 13, positive 13. So that means that our big numbers have to be positive. So that means our little numbers will be negative. Okay. So then when I add these together, that's going to be positive 29, positive 13, positive 7, positive 1. Well, he used 3 and 10, but I see that that adds up to 7, not 13. So that actually isn't the right one to use. we're going to actually have to use the negative 2 and 15. So when I go to set this up, I have 3x in one set, and then in the other I have x. Okay? So remember, I need to use this 3 to make one of these numbers, 2 or 15. Well, 3 goes into 15 5 times, and it was a positive 15, so it'll be positive 5. So sometimes writing 15 there helps. And then in the bottom one, I need it to be a negative 2. Well, that'll just go right there. So there's our answer, 3x minus 2, and then x plus 5.